Everyone at Harborview Emergency Hospital believed Nurse Amelia Ross had one weakness that would eventually get someone hurt. She was deaf. For months. They whispered about it. They whispered when she walked into the trauma unit. They whispered when she asked someone to face her while speaking. They whispered whenever she relied on hand signals, written notes, or careful observation instead of hearing the chaos around her. They did not see a skilled nurse. They saw a problem. She works hard, but emergency medicine is different. One nurse whispered near the medication room. You have to hear everything here, another replied. Monitors, alarms, doctors calling orders. One mistake can cost a life. Amelia stood only a few steps away. She heard none of their words, but she saw their faces. She saw the way conversations stopped when she entered. She saw the uncomfortable smiles. She saw the doubt in their eyes, and she understood. Amelia had spent most of her life learning to understand what people did not say. She lost her hearing when she was 8 years old, after a severe childhood illness. At first, she thought the world had become silent forever. But over time, she discovered another way to listen. She learned to read expressions before words were spoken. She learned to notice tiny changes in breathing, posture, and movement. She learned that emergencies were not only about sound, they were about awareness. After years of training, Amelia became one of the most dedicated nurses at Harborview. She arrived early. She studied every patient chart carefully. She remembered small details other people missed. But none of that mattered to some of her coworkers. They only saw what she could not hear. Dr. Victor Lane, the senior trauma physician, was one of those people. He was respected throughout the hospital. He was confident, experienced, and known for making quick decisions. But he had already decided what Amelia was capable of before he ever watched her work. One morning, Amelia entered trauma room to assist during a difficult patient case. The patient was an elderly man struggling with breathing problems. Dr. Lane looked over his shoulder. Ross, he said, making sure she could read his lips. I need someone who can respond immediately. Are you sure this environment is suitable for you? The room became quiet. Everyone heard the question. Everyone understood what he meant. Amelia looked at him calmly. I have been working here for 3 years, doctor. Dr. Lane nodded. That is true. But experience does not change limitations. A few nurses looked away. Amelia felt the words even if she could not hear the tone. She checked the patient's oxygen level and wrote a note. The patient's breathing pattern changed before the monitor alarm. He needs repositioning. Dr. Lane looked at the screen. A few seconds later, the monitor showed the same change. The patient improved after Amelia's adjustment. But instead of praising her, Dr. Lane simply said, "Good observation." Then he walked away. For him, it was luck. For Amelia, it was training. Later that day, Nurse Brenda stopped beside her at the station. You know, people worry about working with you, Brenda said. Amelia looked up. Why? Brenda hesitated, then shrugged. Because in an emergency, everyone needs to depend on each other. Amelia stared at her. I know. Brenda looked uncomfortable, but instead of apologizing, she added, It's nothing personal. Amelia returned to her patient files. She had heard that sentence many times. It was always personal that evening. A powerful storm moved across the city. Rain hit the hospital windows. Ambulances arrived, one after another. The emergency department became crowded. Doctors rushed between rooms, nurses moved quickly through the halls. The entire hospital was under pressure. Amelia stood at the trauma station organizing supplies when she noticed something unusual. Several military vehicles had stopped outside the emergency entrance. Not ambulances. Asterisk, military vehicles. People immediately started looking toward the doors. A group of Navy SEALs rushed inside. Their uniforms were wet from the rain. Their expressions were serious. One of them shouted, "We need emergency support now." Everyone turned. Behind them, paramedics pushed a stretcher through the doors. But it was not carrying a soldier. It was carrying a military working dog, a Belgian Malinois. The dog wore a tactical harness and had a military identification tag attached. His name was Titan. The entire emergency department went silent. The SEAL team leader stepped forward. Our canine partner was injured during a training operation. He needs immediate stabilization. Dr. Lane approached. What happened? The SEAL looked toward Titan. He protected his handler during an accident. His handler is already being treated at another facility. Titan lifted his head. His eyes moved across the room. He was scared. He was in pain. And when the first doctor stepped closer, Titan growled. Everyone stopped. The SEAL leader raised his hand. Wait. Dr. Lane frowned. We need to examine him. The SEAL shook his head. He won't allow anyone near him. Another nurse whispered. Asterisk, what do we do? No one answered. Titan growled again. The same doctors who believed they could handle. Any emergency suddenly stepped back. The room filled with uncertainty. Then Amelia noticed something nobody else did. She watched Titan's eyes. She watched his breathing. She watched the way he reacted to every movement. And slowly, she stepped forward. Everyone turned. Dr. Lane immediately shook his head. No, Amelia looked at him. The hospital became silent, because everyone knew what he was thinking. The deaf nurse was going toward the military. Dog, Brenda whispered. She can't even hear him. The SEAL team leader watched Amelia carefully. Titan watched her to Amelia, took one slow step toward him. And for the first time that night, the wounded military canine stopped growling. The entire emergency department watched as Amelia Ross stepped closer to Titan. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound in the room came from the heavy rain hitting the hospital windows and the quiet breathing of the injured military dog. Dr. Victor Lane crossed his arms. Amelia stepped back. She looked at him. He spoke slowly so she could read his lips. This is not a normal patient. Amelia looked back at Titan. She already knew that Titan was not just a dog. He was a trained military partner who had spent years protecting people. He was injured, confused, and surrounded by strangers who were moving too quickly around him. To everyone else, Titan looked dangerous. To Amelia, he looked afraid. She raised one hand gently, asking everyone to stay where they were. The SEAL team leader noticed the gesture. You understand him? He asked. Amelia looked at the officer and nodded. Not completely, she replied, but I understand fear. The officer stared at her. Nobody expected that answer. Amelia slowly lowered herself to the floor several feet away from Titan. She did not reach for him. She did not call his name repeatedly. She did not make sudden movements. She simply sat there, watching, waiting. The nurses behind her exchanged confused looks. What is she doing? Brenda whispered. Dr. Lane shook his head. She is wasting time. But Amelia was not wasting time. She was giving Titan something everyone else had taken away from him: control. The dog's eyes stayed fixed on her. His ears moved slightly. His breathing was still fast. His injured body remained tense. Amelia noticed everything. The way Titan kept protecting his left side. The way he looked toward the emergency doors every few seconds. The way his eyes searched the room, as if expecting someone important to return. His handler, Amelia, slowly lifted her hands. Not toward him, just where he could see them. Then she began using simple hand signals. The SEAL team leader suddenly stepped forward. Wait. Everyone looked at him. He stared at Amelia's hands. Asterisk, that signal. Where did she learn that? Dr. Lane looked confused. What are you talking about? The SEAL did not answer. His eyes stayed on Amelia. Titan noticed the movement behind him and immediately became tense again. A stepped backward. The dog growled. Amelia turned her attention back to Titan. She made another slow hand gesture. The growling stopped. The room froze. Dr. Lane looked shocked. What did she just do? The SEAL whispered. She gave him a command. Brenda frowned, but she didn't say anything. The SEAL looked at her. Exactly. Amelia continued communicating with Titan. Her movements were slow and controlled. She was not trying to dominate him. She was showing him that. She understood. Titan lowered his head slightly. Small change, but everyone noticed. The same dog that had refused trained officers, was now listening to a nurse nobody trusted. Amelia slowly moved one step closer. Titan watched her. She stopped. Another step stopped. She allowed him to decide. Asterisk. The SEAL team leader walked closer to Dr. Lane. How does she know those commands? Dr. Lane did not answer. For the first time, he was not sure. Amelia reached into the trauma kit nearby and removed a pair of gloves. She placed them on the ground. Then she looked at Titan. The dog sniffed the air. No growl. No movement, just watching. Amelia gently pointed toward the gloves. Titan looked at them, then back at her. Good, Amelia whispered. She knew he could not understand every word, but he understood her calmness. Finally, Titan lowered his body. Not completely, but enough. The emergency department staff stared. Dr. Lane stepped forward. He allowed her closer. The SEAL officer nodded slowly. Yes. Amelia moved near Titan's side. She checked his condition carefully. Her face changed. Immediately, she saw the seriousness of the injury. She turned toward the medical team. She signed quickly, A. Young resident who knew basic sign language translated, she needs gauze, saline, a blanket, and everyone must move back. Dr. Lane looked at the resident. Did she just give us instructions? The resident nodded. Double quotes, yes, doctor. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Dr. Lane finally said, do what she asked. The room became silent because those words came from the same doctor, who had questioned whether Amelia belonged in emergency medicine. Nurses rushed to collect supplies. Amelia stayed beside Titan. The dog watched every person who approached. Whenever someone moved too quickly, his body became tense. Whenever Amelia gave a hand signal, he relaxed again. The entire room began to understand something. Amelia was not ignoring the danger. She was controlling it. She placed her hand near Titan's harness. Dog looked at her. She waited, then slowly. She touched him. Titan did not move. A few nurses covered their mouths in surprise. The military dog trusted her. Amelia checked his breathing, his temperature, and his condition. She noticed details others missed. This is not only the injury, she signed. The resident translated, he is going into shock. The SEAL team leader immediately looked concerned. Can you help him? Amelia looked at Titan. Then she nodded, double quotes, yes. She began working. Emergency room moved around her. Doctors prepared. Equipment. Nurses followed instructions. The same people who had doubted her were now depending on her. Amelia remained focused. She kept Titan calm while the team stabilized him every few seconds. She checked his eyes every few seconds. She adjusted her approach. She knew that saving him was not only about medicine, it was about trust. After several minutes, Titan's breathing began to slow. The monitor readings improved. The room became quieter. Dr. Lane looked at the numbers, then at Amelia, then back at Titan. He finally understood. She had not overcome her deafness. She had used her awareness. The SEAL team leader walked closer. Ma'am, he said. Amelia looked up. He hesitated because he was choosing his next words carefully. I have worked with military. K9 South for 12 years. He looked at Titan. I have never seen him trust someone this quickly. Amelia simply looked back at the dog. He needed someone to listen. The officer looked at her, but you cannot hear. Amelia gave a small smile. I never said listening required hearing. Nobody in the room had an answer. Then suddenly, Titan lifted his head. His eyes focused on Amelia. His breathing changed. Something was wrong, Amelia noticed. Immediately, she stood. The entire room watched her because they finally realized something. The deaf nurse was not missing what everyone else heard. She was noticing what everyone else ignored, and Titan was about to reveal that the emergency was not over. Yet Titan suddenly became tense again. His ears lifted his eyes, moved toward the emergency room doors, asterisk. The staff noticed the change. A few minutes earlier, the military canine had been calm. He had allowed Amelia to examine him. He had allowed the medical team to help now. Something had changed. Dr. Lane immediately stepped forward. What happened? Amelia did not answer right away. She watched Titan carefully. His breathing, his eyes, his body language. Then she pointed toward the monitoring equipment. His pain is increasing, she signed. The resident. TRANSLATED. Dr. Lane checked the readings. He frowned. She's right. The room became silent. Nobody questioned her anymore. The same nurse they had ignored was now the first person they looked at when something changed. Amelia looked at Titan. He is trying to stay alert because he thinks he still has a job. The SEAL team leader looked surprised. What do you mean? Amelia placed her hand gently near Titan's harness. He is protecting. He thinks his handler still needs him. The officer lowered his eyes. Because she was right. Military canines south were trained to protect, to follow commands and to continue even when they were afraid or injured. Titan was not fighting them. He was fighting his own instinct to keep going. Amelia turned toward the team. Everyone needs to slow down. The room immediately followed. No questions, no arguments, no. One told her she was wrong. The medical team adjusted Titan's position. Carefully, Amelia stayed beside him. She used the same hand signal she had used earlier. Titan watched her. His breathing slowly became steady again. The veterinary trauma team arrived shortly. After, the lead veterinarian, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, entered the room carrying equipment. She stopped when she saw Titan lying calmly. This is the same dog they warned us about. The SEAL leader nodded. Double quotes, he would not allow anyone near him. Dr. Mitchell looked at Amelia, and she managed this. The officer smiled slightly. Yes. Dr. Mitchell examined the work that had already been done. She looked impressed. Who stabilized him? The room became quiet. Everyone looked toward Amelia. Dr. Lane finally spoke. She did. 3 words carried more meaning than any apology, because everyone in the room remembered how he had doubted. Here Dr. Mitchell continued working with Amelia beside her. Together, they prepared Titan for transport. When they lifted him onto the veterinary stretcher, Titan became nervous again. His eyes searched the room. Amelia immediately stepped closer. She gave him one hand. Signaled. Titan relaxed. Dr. Mitchell looked at her. You have worked with military dogs? Before it was not a question. Amelia looked down for a moment. She said nothing. The SEAL team leader noticed. There is something you are not telling us. The hospital staff looked at Amelia for months. They had judged her because they only knew one thing about her. She was deaf. They never asked what else she had experienced. Dr. Lane slowly stepped closer. Amelia, how do you know these commands? She looked around the room, at the nurses who had doubted. At the doctors who had questioned her, at the people who thought they understood her limits. Then she finally answered. My father trained military working dogs. Everyone listened. He taught me their signals when I was young. He told me something important. She looked at Titan. He said, animals do not care about your voice. They care about your trust. The SEAL team leader nodded slowly. That explains the commands. Amelia shook her head. No. Everyone looked at her. Explains only the commands. She paused. It does not explain why he trusted me. The room became quiet. Amelia continued. When I became deaf, many people thought I would never work in emergency medicine. They thought I would always need someone else to guide me. She looked at Titan. But my father taught me that losing one ability does not mean losing your purpose. Nobody spoke, because now they understood. Asterisk. Amelia had spent years proving herself, not because she wanted praise, because she refused to let other people decide what she could become. The SEAL team leader stepped forward. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology." Amelia looked surprised. "For what?" He smiled slightly. "For assuming you were just a nurse who happened to know commands?" He looked at Titan. "You were the person he needed." Titan was moved toward the exit, but before leaving, he stopped. The stretcher paused. Titan lifted his head. His eyes searched until they found Amelia. Then he reached his paw slightly toward her. Everyone noticed. Dr. Lane looked away. He was embarrassed. Not because Amelia had embarrassed him, because he realized he had spent months judging someone without knowing her. Story after Titan was transferred safely. The emergency room slowly returned to normal, but nothing felt the same. The nurses who once whispered about Amelia now watched her differently. Brenda approached her near the nurses' station. For once, she had no sarcastic comment, only regret. "Amelia." Amelia turned. Brenda took a breath. "I'm sorry." Amelia stayed quiet. Brenda continued. "I thought your deafness made you less capable. I was wrong." A few seconds passed. Then Amelia nodded. Double quotes. "Thank you." Dr. Lane approached next. The entire station became quiet. He looked uncomfortable, a feeling nobody had ever seen from him before. "I owe you a bigger apology than anyone here." Amelia looked at him. He continued, "I saw what you could not hear, but I never noticed what you could see." The word surprised everyone. Dr. Lane lowered his head slightly. "You saved a life today. And you reminded all of us that skill does not always look the way we expect." Amelia accepted the apology, not because she needed their approval, but because she knew people could learn. Later that evening, the Navy SEAL team returned to the hospital. The SEAL leader walked to the nurses' station. He was carrying something. A small, framed photograph. It showed Titan standing beside his handler. "He wanted us to give this to you," the officer said. Amelia looked confused. The officer smiled. "Titan." He handed her the photo. "He is recovering." "But before we left, he kept looking toward the door where you were standing." Amelia looked at the picture. The officer continued. "Some people save lives with weapons. Some save lives with medicine." He paused. "Tonight, you saved one with understanding." The next morning, Harborview Hospital felt different. Amelia walked through the emergency department like she always had. Same uniform, same quiet at steps, same calm expression. But this time, nobody looked away. Nobody whispered. Nobody questioned whether she belonged, because everyone had learned something they would never forget. A person is not defined by what they cannot do. They are defined by what they choose to do with what they have. And from that day forward, whenever someone saw Nurse Amelia Ross walk into the trauma unit, they did not see a deaf nurse. They saw the woman who earned the trust of a Navy K-9 when nobody else could.